Over the past 30 years, the Legend of Zelda series has become one of the longest running and most iconic video game franchises. What began as an ambitious action-adventure on the NES has now evolved into a saga spanning more than 20 titles over almost every console generation, and not a single one of them is bad.
Squad-a-la, we're off!
Not a single one. While the fundamental elements have virtually stayed the same, the Legend of Zelda series has tackled increasingly complex themes. This is especially true for Twilight Princess, which coincidentally also happens to be one of my favourite Zelda games. Twilight Princess is one of the very few games that's left me with a lasting impression. It's actually one of the only times I've ever been motivated to actively look into the lore of a video game. But let's start at the beginning. Let me start off by saying that Twilight Princess is full of symbolism. Light versus dark, the fear of the unknown, and why would anyone create that? I'm sure that Uku's symbolic of something, I'm just not sure I want to know what that is. The best part is that all of these symbolic elements are being set up even before you get to move Link around. The game opens with your father figure talking about a loneliness in the hour of twilight. He then palms off a bunch of adult responsibilities to you and a girl steals your horse, but that's beside the point. Opening the game like this introduces us to this world's relationship with the parallel dimension known as the Twilight Realm. This won't come into play again until a little later, and I know I'm getting incredibly analytical here, but this is a great introduction and I really like it. Set a few hundred years after the events of Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess follows Link, a humble farmhand and closet pumpkin thief, on his quest to save Hyrule from an eternal twilight. After mysteriously transforming into a wolf, Link discovers that the Twilight King Zant has decided to invade, and he's brought along a Twilight that turns people into spirits and Link into a puppy. So objectively speaking, it's not all bad. Helping Link along the way is another creature from the Twilight Realm named Midna, and together they are the spitting image of a monkey cowboy riding a dog. Now at this point, most people like to bring up the first hour of Twilight Princess. It's easily one of the most widely criticized introductions to any Zelda game. But you know what? I don't think it deserves that. So the opening hour goes like this. You get the grass to call the bird, to get the cradle to give to the woman, to get the fishing rod to get the fish to give to the cat, so it goes home so the shop opens so you can buy the slingshot to impress the village kids. And you heard some goats. Normally I might have a problem with all of this. After all, half a dozen fetch quests isn't exactly the most elegant way to start a game. But Twilight Princess relies on you developing connections with the people of Hyrule, and like it or not, these fetch quests actually let you do that in a very short space of time. The relationship that you develop with the children of Ordon Village is particularly important. After the introduction, a group of Boblins show up and decide to kidnap them, and this is ultimately what starts Link on his journey. If I hadn't just spent an hour hitting one of them in the face with a slingshot, then I really wouldn't care that an 8-foot goblin riding a giant weaponized pig just stole them all. From the very beginning, every character you meet feels unique. There wasn't a single time in the entire game that I stopped and thought that a character didn't need to be there. Everybody has a purpose, and because the development team has spent so long fleshing out each supporting character's story and relationships, I actually care about every single one of them. Even the homicidal man baby. All of this ends up having a cascading effect on the rest of the game. Because I care about the characters, I'm more invested in the world, and this suddenly makes the idea of a permanent alien Twilight that much more threatening. Majora's Mask is the only other entry in the franchise that's made me want to help the game world this badly, but that probably has less to do with the characters and a lot more to do with the giant sentient moon face that's crashing into the... Well, everybody's dead. Twilight Princess also has a very cool Majora's Mask Easter egg hidden in a conversation with a Goron. After you finish the second dungeon, this dapper fellow just happens to mention that you've met with a terrible fate. It's fitting considering that Twilight Princess falls into the same timeline as Majora's Mask, and you're occasionally forced to transform back into a human. Like an Animorph. Which brings me to arguably the most important character in the game, Agatha the Bug Girl. Little snail, just once, I'd like to take a bath in that slime. You disgust me. Midna is somewhat of an oddity in the Zelda universe, and I'm not just saying that because she has hair with opposable thumbs. Unlike most of the characters in the series, she can't really be described as either good or evil. For the majority of the game, she tends to fall somewhere in between. We first meet her while Link's trapped in the dungeon of Hyrule Castle. Midna agrees to help Link escape, but only if he'll do what she wants. Midna's pretty quick to admit that she's basically just using Link, and thus, a beautiful partnership is born. Midna's moral ambiguity actually makes for an interesting dynamic between her and Link. Every other companion he's ever had has wanted to help him because it's the right thing to do. Midna, on the other hand, spends half the game mocking him. She really doesn't care. On the other side of this is the self-proclaimed Twilight King Zant. While he's never outwardly aggressive, he still manages to be one of the most intimidating antagonists in the series, especially with the bowl cut. He always carries himself with an infallible sense of confidence, and this, more than anything, makes him feel so much more threatening than Ganondorf ever was. He's also motivated by more than just power. Years before the events of Twilight Princess, the people of the Twilight Realm were banished from the world of light. While most of the Twilight have come to accept this, Zant still wants to return them to Hyrule no matter the cost. What makes Zant such an interesting villain to me is that I don't think his intentions were ever inherently evil. In a roundabout way, it seems like he only wants what's best for his people. I mean, sure, that might involve conquering a world and displacing everyone in it, but that's a sacrifice that he's willing to make. So generous of him. You could even argue that many of the bosses in the game aren't really evil. It becomes very obvious very early on that a lot of the enemies you face are being manipulated by an outside force. First it's part of a helmet, then it's a mirror, and then it's this town full of kittens. Shh, you're mine now. Take this Yeti for example. She's adorable and she walks like a penguin, but she also involuntarily turns into a giant ice monster that wants to destroy you. No matter how many times she attacks me, I always feel bad about fighting back. I mean, you'd have to be pretty heartless to want to... Okay, I take it back. Twilight Princess is widely regarded as one of the darkest games in the series, and this just ends up reinforcing that for me. Usually you're fighting monsters that want to attack you, but the fact that these people have no control over their actions makes everything so much darker. Now I know I've been taking a light approach to all of this, but the reality is that Twilight Princess addresses some pretty heavy stuff. There's a moment near the end of the game where you find out that Bruce Willis was actually dead all along. Oh wait, that was Gremlins 2. Yeah, that's pretty much it.